Elk, so, I am just, I have to set up my first question by just saying what a treat it's been the last week. You called me out of the blue. I don't know if you know this, but that was my first live DJ show in the actual radio station. I've been DJing for 6 months, but I've been doing all my DJ shows just by recording one long MP3, a 2-hour show, lobbing it into the station during the pandemic. Last week, the studio opens up. I go in for my first live show. The phone rings and it's you. And my last week has been a blast listening to and learning all about the Mommyheads. So first of all, before I even ask a question, thank you for the last week of great music.
That makes me feel really good. Yeah, it's weird that my COVID pastime has been to get, well, first it started with radio stations that were playing the last CD because it was our highest played college CD in forever. And so the radio guy's like, yeah, you should check it out. Like, use Simple Radio app and listen to the people playing you. And, they're people you'd be friends with. And that's so true. I think that, I think from now on, when we go to shows, we're not only going to appreciate shows because of COVID, but we're going to realize that everyone in that audience could be one of our friends because this band that we're watching, whoever it is drawing us like flies to this one cultural event. And so for me, those are the guys who are playing us. And then I started branching out because I emailed those 5 to 10 DJs and from your station, I heard the Jayhawks, who we used to play with, Kotke, who I saw when I was like 10 in New York and blew my mind with David Grisman, Jim Lauderdale, who we share a publicist who tries to push his career and does his best, And I was like, this is what my radio guy was talking about. That,
yeah.
Not only is there one DJ who may know us on that station and play us, but there's other like-minded DJs, and they're not always in these metropolitan areas. The better stations and the freer stations tend to be outside the New York and the LA, and it's so true. We have nothing here. So yeah, I'm glad that you picked up.
Well, so but a little bit of mystery on my end is why, because I hadn't played any Mommyheads when something triggered you to just call and say, thanks for XYZ tune. And in fact, we didn't have a great connection. I was on the studio. Of course, I'm nervous. It's my first live show in an actual freaking studio. And, here's this call and, hey, thanks for the great tunes. But something prompted you to call. I don't know what track it was, but
I've had, I get hooked on a station. And so I'll just play in the background as I'm working, like I'm sending emails. I hate to be in silence. I want to learn something new musically. And if it piques my interest while I'm typing and I have to stop, then I know it's either something I know that's great, I haven't heard in a long time, or something new. Both are fine. And I think your song selection, I was just like, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Like, I know this guy. I'm going to call and just see what happens. And you were like, yeah, cool. And, send me whatever. But you can tell it's almost like the way dogs sniff fire hydrants. Like, they're like, it's like, my kids call it P-mail. Like, they're like, there's a combo here. I think there's a Doberman Pinscher and a I could tell by what you're playing that I was like, I'm going to tell him he's doing great. And I think I need to send him some music. So that was really the whole kit caboodle right there.
All right. So I want you, if you can, I think this is absolutely fascinating, your whole story. If you could do, I don't know, I'll give you 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The Mommyheads, wow, you guys have been around a long time. You took a long break. I'd like to hear kind of just what was the opening kind of year moment where the Mommyheads came together. I could look up all the history online, but I'd love to hear from you about where this all started. And you had one major label release. Things were there were lots of hope, lots of promise, and then you ended up a little hiatus.
So we ended up with the classic story, in the 90s. But so we started in the 80s in New York, and we really weren't, we pushed the gritty part of our music, and we pushed the edgy part because everyone was edgy. Everybody wanted to be Suicide or Sonic Youth, and Glenn Study with Glenn Branca and all this stuff. And we were a little more melodic and a little more progressive. And we tended to like musicianship a little too much for our own good, and therefore the scene didn't totally accept us. We were a high school band. We met in music and art, and of course we were all geeks, and we knew about the battles and the arguments were who was better, Stuart Copeland or Neil Peart, the usual musician stuff. And so we were a little too musical for the New York scene. We made our first couple of records. We recorded them at Wharton Tier Studio. He was busy recording Sonic Youth and Dinosaurs Jr.'s first 3 pivotal records. We didn't fit in. And then we kind of glommed on to the DC scene because there was great labels down there: Discord, Teen Beat, Simple Machines. Jenny at Simple Machines loved the band, put out our second record. And, they mostly were punk, Nation of Ulysses.
Fugazi?
They had, some softer stuff, but...
Was that Fugazi time?
Fugazi at Discord, Teen Beat, Unrest, everything was very angry. There wasn't, Matthew Sweet hadn't hit yet, and Jellyfish really hadn't hit yet, and all the musicians were kind of like dressing in the sheep's clothing of noise and just trying to survive. And so the DC scene didn't click, and so when we moved to San Francisco, we made 3 more records, Flying Suit, Bingham's Hole, and then the Geffen record. And the 4th record, Bingham's Hole, we did with Peter Cadis. It was his first production. He went on to produce all the national records, all the Interpol records, all the Jonesy records, Grammy for Sting, Mates of State, like Trey Anastasio from Phish. Like he became the biggest producer in alternative music. But we were our first gig. We were on his label. It was really cool. And that got us the notoriety, and we toured constantly. We played with everybody, like name it, Red House Painters, Sunny Day Real Estate, Dandy Warhols opened for us in Idaho. It was random. It was like, Train opened for us. We played with everyone. We would Cake open for us for 10 shows before they went, and we started opening for them. We were always on the road. We loved the road. Didn't know how to make a record really, and just kept going. And then Geffen signed us, and we were the classic 90s story. Too much money. They had Nirvana. They were trying to top Nirvana. It was never going to happen. We shared 2 A&R guys. One guy had Peter Gabriel and Counting Crows, and the other A&R guy had Weezer and Guns N' Roses. Where did we fit in? We had a terrible name. Like, I'm going to see Guns N' Roses. I want to see Pearl Jam. You never say, I'm going to see the Mommyheads. It sounds stupid,
Yeah, but there's, on that point alone, there's plenty of bands out there that you'd say, you never say, you could just go down the list. If you hit it, then it's a cool name.
Exactly. If you're successful, if everyone loves you, they forgive you.
Yeah.
But so we went down this. We went down in flames, kind of just like Jawbreaker was a big band. They were neighbors of ours. They got signed to Geffen, and no one liked their record, and they went down. And it's a long list. It's like there was so much money, like Brainiac, and the guy died, but there's all these like almost success stories, and we fell into that. And just to put a period on it, like the money killed us. Getting produced by Don Was, walking around LA, shaking hands with Willie Nelson, Leon Russell, all our heroes.
My God.
Everyone was there. Like we were in our session at Ocean Way, and Foreigner walked in, and they were like, we were so happy to meet you. And I'm like, I don't even know what's happening, And it was all because they, John Bryan brought his rig up to the studio on Mulholland just to play on the record. Like, he's a hero. Like, he produced Aimee Mann. Like, dude, I mean, it was, the money was, the smell of money was everywhere. And musicians knew that in order to survive, they had to follow that smell. And we were not part of it. We were from San Francisco, New York, and we felt like outsiders. Too much money, didn't push it, broke up. And that was the 90s. So there's your, like sort of classic story of a good scenario that could have stayed good. And the only guys that our peers that kept it going was Flaming Lips, who got better, put out soft Bulletin. Spoon, who run Elektra and got dropped the same day we did. And they were like, we're going to keep going, and I admire those guys, and
love Spoon. Yeah.
Guided by Voices.
Oh.
I got dropped from their one awful major label experience. They were like, what? Everyone else was like, we're going to fight back by longevity. And we didn't have it. So we broke up. 97, 98.
Ouch.
Yeah, it was a bummer, A lot of egos, damaged egos, and it's a classic story. There's thousands of bands like us. So we didn't, 2000, I had some conversations that I thought were very pivotal. One really important one was I was at a tape op convention on a panel, and Chris Walla walks up. He's hanging out with my buddy John Vanderslice, who's this great, he owned Tiny Telephone. Oldest guy, like oldest friend we've ever, just amazing guy.
Oh,
and he goes, this guy wants to meet you really bad, Chris Walla. And I wasn't sure, is this the guy from that new hot band? He comes up to me and he goes, you need to keep doing the Mommyheads because it's unfair that you're not. And I just want to tell you, we've always been fans, and they liked my solo work. And I was like, wow, like it was like, they were a shooting star, I once gave a lift to Jello Biafra, and I sat across the Bay Bridge, and I said, how do you keep doing this? And he goes, I just do. You don't stop. So it's this blue collar sort of reminder. And then our first drummer died, our high school drummer, who was on the first 2 records, and we got together, and I brought up those conversations. I said, there are bands out there. Someone Still Loves You, Boris Yeltsin. We're big fans. Sunny Day Real Estate, Death Cab for Cutie. And I think they're inspired by us. Let's keep doing this. And that was 2008, and we decided to keep going. So it was really just from love,
Yeah. So at that point you needed a new drummer at that point. But if the other 3 are all the same?
Yeah, ironically, the first drummer was the high school drummer, but the last 3 records of the 90s was the drummer that we still play with. So the first time we played on stage together, the keyboard player, the drummer, and I, was 88, and we opened for Crowded House at CBGB's. And I'm telling you, if there's a more magical night, I couldn't tell you what they just played their instruments. They didn't wear the weird mariachi outfits, it was a snare drum. The drummer played snare. The bass player had sort of a Martin, acoustic bass, and it was like, wow. So this is great songwriting in a New York environment, in a kind of grungy, dirty environment, and it works really well. And we should be proud of what we do, not feel bad that we're not Sonic Youth. And they're killing it. Like, this audience loves them. It's packed, and it's so special. And it's pure melody, and it's good feeling, and they're cracking jokes. This is so un-New York. We had to import this from Australia. And the 3 of us looked at each other, and we're still playing. On that night, knew we got to do this. And that was 88 or 89. And the drummer joined later. The keyboardist joined a little later, 3 years later, and we're still playing. It's 30 years later. And I'm blessed. I feel like just to have them as friends, let alone musical, guys to collaborate with, is just magical. So.
And so you mentioned a couple of cities. You're in New York City right now. Are you in Manhattan, Brooklyn?
North and Westchester. So
Okay.
It's a county right above.
Right. Okay. And then the other 3 live where?
So the drummer lives in Beacon, which is they call it Brooklyn North. So it's got one of the top 5 main streets of America right now. I don't know in what magazine. So that's like an hour and a half north of New York, and the bass player lives in North Adams, where the Wilco Festival happens. And then the keyboardist lives in Cape Cod, which is one of the big vacation destinations of the Northeast.
Absolutely. I grew up outside Boston, so I know Cape Cod well. And yeah, that's awesome.
Also, Lowell.
Yeah, Lowell, Massachusetts.
Yeah, we were just there, and
Q.
It was great.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in Lincoln, which is not too far from Lowell. Lincoln's right between Concord and Lexington, so.
Nice.
Yeah. And then lived in Newton for a long time. That was right after college, and that was 76, 77 when the rat in Boston was going crazy with Talking Heads and Ramones and Cars and Suicide. Actually, I saw Suicide at the Rat in Boston. And
mind blowing, right? I saw them at CB's, and it was just the energy. It was a synth and guys singing, and it was amazing.
You can't believe what you're
An
seeing.
echo.
Yeah. I mean, the stage at the Rat is right. You can get a seat literally this close, and the guy's just right there in your face, just prowling around with that dark look, and yeah, it's just wonderful. Yeah, just wonderful.
It's amazing now that most kids don't even realize they're ripping it off.
Yeah.
Seminal vibe that never happened before.
Yeah.
You know, like techno, almost doo-wop in the melody, but aggressive and dark. And Marilyn Manson 20 years earlier. It's like
Yep.
so special. You
So
know, it's
could,
funny. Boston gets forgotten in that. You know, in the late '60s, there was the Electric Circus, and you had you know just such a thriving scene. And then the Rad and the '70s and the '80s. To me, it was better than almost as good as New York for a CB scene, but then better than New York after CB's lost everybody, because you had so many great bands and all the colleges. It was really just an amazing scene.
yep. So, I mean, that hiatus time, that must have been just tough. Anybody who has music in their bones, like you clearly have music in your bones. I can't imagine you were probably still writing songs and doing stuff, but not having a band, as even with all the trials and tribulations that come with having a band in terms of relationships and what is the big plan? Should we go record another record? Should we go on a world tour? I don't know. But that must have been a tough 10 years.
Well, I tried a solo record, and the reason I went with Elk is because Leonard Cohen's son was on RCA, and I was on RCA. He was on Columbia in 2000, and we tried to put him records out the same day. And my real name's Cohen, and his name's Cohen, and the managers had a talk on the phone, and they're like, well, Leonard Cohen's his dad. What do you got? I tried the solo record, but I didn't enjoy it. And I'm starting to realize more and more why I didn't enjoy doing solo. And I don't understand how solo artists can go for so many years. A, you have the camaraderie. B, there's a progressiveness about a band, even if they're not progressive. You don't have to be Genesis to be a band. But if you play your parts in such a distinctive way, like Mike Watt did, and I asked him when we opened for Mike, about Firehose and about Minutemen, I'm like, you guys were so distinctive. It was almost progressive. And he's like, yeah, because progressive music doesn't have to be noodling and a lot of drum solos and a lot of stuff where you're like, why are you playing all these notes? Progressive music to me is when each member stands out and has an identity. When you hear Bill Bruford on any side project, when you hear any of these guys, because or like the lead singer of Kansas sang on other records. He sang with what's his name from Genesis when he did his solo, the guitarist. Like, it's so obvious that bass player is that bass player. Whereas with solo records, and LA's filled with solo record guys who play backing on solo records. Their job is to sort of not have a personality, but to support the song. Now, here's my quandary. I'm a songwriter, but I don't need you to support my song and just play backbeats. Like, I want you to speak. And I want it to be a listening experience that tingles different parts of the mouth. Like when you have really good food, it doesn't just hit one part of the mouth. It's the top, it's the bottom, it's the tip of the tongue. And that to me is a great musical listening experience where you're envisioning the person playing, not just the singer. And that to me is true progressive music. The progression in being boring to exciting. That's one way of putting it. But so, I forgot why I started talking about this. But, that's why I missed a band, because I see these guys that I play with so distinctly and their styles so distinctly. And what I want is not to write a song and have it just be backed, but I want it to really explode. And it doesn't have to be production explosion. It could be we're just playing. But when you hear like Robert Plant and any of his new bands, it's so distinctive. When you hear Los Lobos, it's so distinctive, all the parts.
Yeah.
And that to me is what I missed. I missed personality from every part that hits your ears. And that's the thing that, A, if you never have a band, you're missing out. B, when bands break up, that's the saddest part. And C, most people now with GarageBand just make these records and they put singles up and it's them in a beatbox, or it's them in loops, or it's them and their friend, But when they don't have the special chemistry of a band that's been playing for a while, their music is missing that extra dimension. And that's the sad part of so much new music that's missing what those bands had in the 70s. The Gentle Giants, the Yeses, they had distinction in every note and character. And it was like this conversation you want to be part of. You just wanted to they included you. It was like, come into your space. And so that's what I missed. And that's why in 2008, I was ready. I was just like, we got to do this, guys. So, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a magic. It really is.
You make a really good point about, well, I watched those videos from Q, what is it, Q Sessions, what are they called? The studio? Q Division. Yeah. And boy, I mean, you're playing live and it's beautiful, note for note, almost, you know, great interplay. I assume you can't do too many takes given the studio cost you're spending up there. You're nailing these songs right out of the chute. And they come across great, but they're intricate. They're not, these are not 3 chords in a trail of dust.
Yeah, you know, well, Q Division was happy to have us because they're slow right now. So this is perfect.
Yeah. Sure.
And there's not a lot of people going in and banging the door down, you know, so they're such a busy place generally. So for them to do this digital thing is for them to stay relevant, for us to stay relevant. It was a perfect two-way street. But the irony of the whole thing is we never played the songs before.
What?
So it's like what we had to rely on is 30 years of trust. Like, which means every chord, you're doing this, you're going back and someone catches you, you know? It's like constantly going back, leaning back with your hands crossed, you know, you're staring at the stage and you're falling back into the crowd. And that's what it was. And there's something to that. There was a movie called Into the Void or Into the Abyss about these 2 climbers. And the guy said, it's a pivotal moment. He goes, I just had to jump into this darkness. And he landed on a ledge and the ledge let him out. And playing in a band, if you don't have that ledge, that jump in the darkness, hit the ledge through a song hundreds of times within one song, and you don't keep hitting that ledge, which naturally should happen. It's not the right band for you. But if it is, then you keep hitting that ledge and you find your way out. And it's not anything to do with your talent. You're just playing and you're just hoping those guys can carry you through. And that's the irony of that video.
That's great. So what would you say the Mommyheads stand for today in the musical scene? What is the Mommyheads' point of view now?
Well, our personal point of view is we just want to hang with each other. And, you know, this is our little man cave. We don't play golf. You know, we don't belong to a club, some sort of elite club where only certain people go. This is what we do, you know, for real bliss and happiness. And I always say every gig should feel like a barbecue, like a 4th of July barbecue. And if it does, then we're doing the right thing. And in terms of our place in society or history, I don't know if we have one, but for certain people, and they're real specific and they're similar to us, we hold a very important place, which is our records sound like their record collection. So they sound 70s, 60s, 70s, early 80s-ish, which is a genre of very good sounding music where the core elements sound so good you could distort them and they still sound good. It's not a thin sort of crispy, brittle, modern thing. And a lot of bands we share love with is, you know, the Lips. Like they did a lot of their, you know, stuff with at that studio up in Erie, New York. Dave Friedman, I think his name was. And you knew that the guy was getting these beautiful sounds, and he knew the history of music and history of recording. And so our place there is sonically to retain what was great about what we loved growing up, to write music that harkens back to that, maybe song structurally, that respects it, that respects, you know, pop, prog, all that stuff, but also takes subject matter that means something to us now and couches it in a way where it could be listened to and maybe someone can go, meaning if I have an argument with somebody and I have a different side, which seems to be now everyone is fighting about, should I get the vaccine? Are you red or you're blue? You know, do you want to join the world economy? Should we put up walls? Everyone's got a fight. But if you couch that your point of view in gorgeous sounds and song structures that are relatively classic and cutting edge, and you say something important in there or something that means something to you, the melody alone will carry it into the person's ears in such a way where it's not a fight anymore, but it's the communication that we actually want to have as human beings. It gets in there, you're singing along with it while you're doing the dishes, but you realize you're singing along the other point of view that you never thought you would. And that to us is a relevant way to make art in 2021. It's a way to sort of communicate without the chaos, but with melody and harmony and counter rhythms, And if we could do that, then our little place in the world is fine for us wherever we're at.
If you were to sell, try to promote the band right now, and you were on sitting next to Jimmy Fallon tonight on the Tonight Show, and he were to say, who's going to like the Mommyheads? Who do you connect with today to sell to today's youth and people out there? Or does it matter that you have other bands to bounce off as touching points, as reference points?
If it was 10 or 20 years ago, I would be very, very shy about where we stood and who we connect with and promoting. But the fact that we took a 30-year-old record, like I found it on Amazon by accident for $903. And I thought that a cover is terrible. It was never mastered. Why is it so expensive? We send it to radio last month and it goes to 67, which is pretty good. Like we were above McCartney for a while on college radio. Like I know it's just a number and words, but I was like, whoa. Of course, above us was like, Gay for Johnny Depp and King Gizzard Wizard, whatever. So it doesn't matter. And I've had interviews with 20-year-old DJs that do blogs and, are serious about music. And to them, they said, when did you record this? Like, which year? Like thinking it was last year. And I'm like, 30 years ago. And their response is, it sounds kind of current. It sounds encumbered by the times, and it sounds like out of place in a cool way and a little timeless. So now more than ever, I feel more confident that this kind of quirky, strange, but highly melodic music is as good now as it maybe better than 92. So I would have no problem saying to anybody, you should listen to this. Whereas when Nirvana came out, I was hiding copies. I was burning them. I was like putting them in my jacket pocket and running away. I felt embarrassed by our music for a while,
And that just so folks know what you're talking about, the album you're talking about is Coming Into Beauty, right? The one that you just
Coming Into Beauty was our second record. Speaking of, I can play you on acoustic Wedding Day, which is the first song. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Love is like the sun. If you stare too long, your eyes burn up, and there's not enough seeing night dogs to take me to your house. On one hand, there's the baby. If it's gonna be born, it needs a family. On the other hand is my finger pointing to a travel brochure. Oh, the bigger the idea, the harder it will fall. And you, my dear, I don't want to hurt at all. Everyone was smiling as I walked by with the bride, and then it started raining. We had to call it off and go inside. Oh, the bigger the idea, the harder it will fall. And you, my dear, I don't want to hurt at all. On our wedding day, did I hear you say everything was going to be
Oh, that was fun.
And we're back. Yeah. So when was that recorded? When was the acoustic version recorded?
92, maybe 91.
Okay, so yeah. And the other one I love on there is that's on there too. The Like a Brick, is that the name of the song?
Yeah, I could play that right now if you'd like. I got the guitar.
I gotta say, this is before we play it. I just want to say this is one of the songs when I first started going through your stuff that just made me stop. Really thoughtful lyric. So let's hear that now.
Cool. Here we go.
A fig tree looks into the sky and wonders what it's like to be a cloud. Looks into a carriage and wonders what it's like to be a baby. Looks in a building and it wonders what it's like to be a brick. Holding up 100 people is so. Wish I could tell you, but I don't know. 'Cause I barely can hold up myself. What it's like to be a brick. It's not alive, but it serves its purpose. I wish that I could only serve a purpose. I wonder what it's like to be a sewer rat. Looks into a book and wonders what it's like to be the owner of a big casino. Who wonders what it's like to be a bird in the sky. Who wonders what it's like to be a brick. Holding up 100 people is so. Wish I could tell you, but I don't know. 'Cause I barely could hold up myself. What it's like to be a brick. It's not alive, but it serves its purpose. Wish I could only serve a purpose. I wonder what it's like to be
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 songs written by a 20-year-old thinking about big concepts, and there's an innocence I guess we could still relate to. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Do you just get up in the morning and fall out of bed and write a song? I mean, is it that easy? It seems like you don't, you don't need much in terms of an idea, and then you just go with it.
You know, it's funny because you asked me, I was probably pretty sad when the band broke up. What I did was I got into commercial music writing, and I would get a commercial in at the place I worked and write 3 spots a day. So I have this weird Randy Newman-esque need to wake up and just write. And I got it out of my system for about 10 years doing that, and paid off all my debts trying to be a rock star at Geffen because the money is way better. And I also liked it because they kind of said what they thought. Like in the music business, it's like, yeah, we love it. And then they would just drop you, you know? So it was very duplicitous and you didn't know what was happening. But with writing for commercial music in New York, it was very simple. And, you know, Adam Schlesinger did it for Fountains of Wayne. Like there were a lot of guys who did it to pay off debts from trying to be, you know, in the rock world. So that I kind of got my yayas out doing that. And in terms of, you know, I really place a lot of value on being creative, and I will write for every 10 songs, I'll write 10 more and throw them away happily because, you know, I'm not so precious that the world needs to hear everything. Mm-hmm. I think the world should hear what you feel good about. Not everything you do is going to be great. So, and the other thing about being in a band is their initial response is so damn important. If they're like, oh, that third one was so good, I'm like, let's just work on that.
Yeah. And
let's discard the other 4, you know? And so there's the springboard of what their influences are and what they like, and is like keeps the trueness, keeps the center, keeps that sort of North Star lit for you artistically, and keeps the thread where you always know it's that band. And it's not so much you, because you're always searching, the other thing about writing is like getting it wrong. Like we're always inspired. Like I used to listen to Talking Heads and I'd want to do Remain in Light. So I'd do a thing with percussive stuff. And then I'd listen to the Buzzcocks and I want to do simple punk. The fact that I got it wrong was good, because if I'd gotten it too right, I'd be in a cover band. And the Talking Heads, I know for a fact, thought they were doing James Brown when they were doing it was like very stiff and rigid. They were under the impression they were funky. It wasn't until they got Bernie Worrell and they got the rest of Funkadelic in there, the singers, that they actually got funky. But if you strip back all those extra players, it's still very stiff, like Brown graduates or RISD graduates just going ding ding ding, they're not funky. So they got it so wrong, and David Byrne got his vocal whatever so wrong that he became David Byrne, So same with XTC. They loved Beefheart, they loved jazz, and they kind of got it wrong, which is a benefit for us. And so by us getting it wrong is our best asset.
And that's a great story. And in fact, this is just from memory, but XTC wasn't doing that much. I think Dear God they basically had to convince them to put that on the album. It was like the company was looking for a hit, and the XTC was pretty much done as a kind of minor act. And then Dear God, which was kind of an accidental song, gets thrown out there, and massive worldwide hit.
What a gorgeous song too.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that I think every time too much money is involved, it's bad. And when you're pushed to the very edge, and I know Spielberg said this, or I think it was Spielberg, when you're at that edge and you don't know what to do and you got to really rely on your wits and you start sweating and you have to come up with stuff on the spot, that's when you have your best. And look at Dune versus Blue Velvet and Eraserhead. And, our Geffen record is a good record with some really good songs on it, but it's not a really great record that takes you places. It's just one song after another because we had too much money. And, when you live in the shadows creatively and you don't know what's happening and you feel free, that's when you make your great record. And it's so ironic because we live in this is why we go to Sweden all the time. America is such a results-oriented country. Like, where's my destination? Am I going to be financially rich? Am I going to, it's like, it's not about art really. That's really incumbent upon us to make it about art. Our society will never make it about art, and other countries have been around a little longer. The Norways, the Swedens, the Denmarks, they're supported, their governments are very supportive, and they really do make it about art. And that's why we go there.
How did that come about? How did you first go to Sweden, and then did you just hit it right away there?
It's so weird. Okay, so back in the day, before the internet, Geffen made 10,000 CDs, 15,000 CDs, and they put it in the system, and they got it at the front of every tower for a day or two. And they also sent it to Scandinavia, South Korea, Indonesia. Some places didn't even realize we'd broken up, and they dropped us because Geffen was part of WIA, and it was like, or whatever they were part of, Universal, and all these different countries had their own sort of agendas and likes and dislikes. Yes was not popular, but Genesis was popular in Sweden. Nobody told us.
Yeah.
Same here. Like, we like Genesis, and yes, but when we went home first couple of albums, they were like, "You're big where?" Like, every country has their own thing. So Sweden played us not knowing we'd broken up for 10 years. That Geffen record played for 10 years on their one radio station incessantly. And after a while, they were just like, somebody's got to call these guys. So I get a call from a guy he's like, "My name is Bert. I work in this semi-socialist organization that gets government sponsoring, and we really want to bring you over, and we're funded." And he's like, "Don't worry." And so we show up in Stockholm, and there's all these people in a club. They know all the songs. I had people in the audience jumping on stage singing songs for us. Like, that guy there, he really wants to sing this song. Come on up. We became a karaoke band.
You can
It
see
was
this
so
on,
much fun.
it's on YouTube. Just go look. It's on YouTube.
It was so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy's name's Charlie M, and he sings Jaded better than I could ever sing. You know, this happens with bands. Oh, so the thing about CDs also, I always say this, it's like with Spotify and Apple Music, when you shut your laptop, the music dies. It's just a concept. But with CDs, they're everywhere. Like they're in between the car seats, they're in the glove compartment, they're in the car door thing. Everywhere you turn, there's CDs. You know, if you own CDs, they're on shelves, they're full of dust, they're behind glasses in the kitchen, they're in the garage, stacked up, about to fall over. Kids are using them as like, I mean, they're literally in your life as this annoying reminder of this music, you know. And at some point, you're like, God damn it, I gotta put this in a CD player. And so when we were only on CDs back in the day, as we all know, and records, you know, there's something physical about it, and there's something that's like, it's like part of your life, like a book, and that helped us and got us to weird places on the planet. And to me, to have 10,000, 15,000 CDs pushed out, even after getting dropped, is better than 1 million likes or hits digitally, because you don't know who they are, you know, and you don't know what that means. So it's just an analytic. It pays you nothing, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of miss those days.
Yeah.
But I'm an old fart.
So how do we get this country back to appreciating art for its own freaking sake and not measure everything, quantify it, rate it, you know, best of this, rank it, look for commercial success in every little thing? I mean, how do we do that?
It's hard. I can tell you, I'm blown away by community radio. I think that's some of the best stations. I'm not just trying to blow smoke up you guys, but the best stations tend not to be in major metropolitan areas, but they're the love and joy of maybe some retired guy with money started it, and all of a sudden everybody glommed around it in that town. But some of my favorite stations are in Colorado, they're in Arizona, they're in North Dakota, they're in Montana, and I just listen, and it's freedom. It's pure freedom. So I think community stations, college stations, where you have the old timers, you got the young kids, it's this mentoring program that's not paid for by anyone. It's just pure mentoring for the love of art. To me, that's gorgeous. Like when you have somebody with a great record collection and a kid who has an old soul and knows that this is great music and needs to keep that fire lit. To me, that's just beautiful. So those two things I love. And I think it's we got to get away from analytics. My press guy told me a great story. He's like, you know, back in the day, the Times had power for culture, and what that meant was the Times, New York Times hit your door, you opened it up, and there was no way to count where your eyeballs went. There were no analytics. It just knew it had you for that paper, and it would stick in. Here's a new artist, Bruce Springsteen. Boom. Here's a new artist, Bob Dylan. Here's a new artist, you know, Galaxie 500, you know. And there were these and they knew they had that power because your eyeballs you were looking at Nixon this and Carter this and Reagan this. But it also underneath, they would slip it in. And now, because of digital, your eyeballs, every time it hits something, it's not a retina scan, but it knows you're on there. You're clicking through. And so what happens when there's a Trump? The top 5 analytics are Trump. Now the top 5 analytics are Fox News, or the top 5 analytics are Biden. There is no way to slip in, check out this new artist, Bob Dylan. Check out this new artist, Bruce Springsteen, because there's no room in this very analytically sort of derived media, you know, situation we're in to sneak in what you personally are enjoying and you think word of mouth that other person who's reading would like. And that's a big problem. So where do we fight it? Word of mouth. You know, the way I called you, now we're doing this. And then we're going to share what I'm listening to. You're going to tell me, check this out. I think you're going to like it. We got to go back to that. It's the village mentality, and we got to fight analytics that don't do us any good.
Yeah.
And that's how the Mommyheads will survive.
That's great. So the Mommyheads' future at this point is keep on cranking.
Yeah, you know, we're 6 records in from when we got back together. The last record did really well, 56.
New Kings of Pop. Let's get the titles out there.
Okay, so yeah, New Kings of Pop. The record before that was Future You. Record before that was Soundtrack to the World's End with my daughter in a gas mask, which was 3 years ago before the pandemic. We're singing about stuff that, like New Kings of Pop is about. It's just, I'll play it on the acoustic. It's a song about a guy in the suburbs, not unlike us, who had to, who has kids and a sippy cup in his back pocket that's leaking all over his pants. He's not sexy anymore. He's not out hawking his wares, but he has the ability to be as good as Prince or Michael Jackson, maybe, just say maybe. But he's stuck in suburbia, and that frustration is what that song's about. So I'll do an acoustic version now called New Kings of Pop off the last record. So it's the Mommyheads, New Kings of Pop. I'm Adam Elk, and here we go.
Citizens of the world are getting so frustrated. They know that golden throne has long been abdicated. They cried 1,000 tears as they wandered off to bed. They felt it in the air. They knew the king was dead. How can a middle-aged man with slightly thinning hair rock in a minivan with melodies to spare? Who never had a taste for the adoring crowd, who never did desire to sing his songs out loud? Will he ever give a chance at a clear shot at the crown? Will he ever quite believe in the power of his sound? But he never will give up until he is the new king of pop. Delusions are the only way to make it to the top. The new king of pop. Even if he lost his way, he might never stop. Citizens of the world are getting tired of waiting. The process is so slow. They're sick of this debating. The time to act is now. We can't rely on luck. Our hearts are still broken since the one true band broke up. As soon as they play out, they shake loose from the grips. That slight familiar feeling, the suburban deep eclipse. They set up their PA in another roadside bar and pass around the hat until they climb back in the car. Will they ever have a chance at a real shot at the crown? Will they ever quite believe in the power of their sound? But they never will give up until they are the new kings of pop. Delusions are the only way to make it to the top. The new kings of pop. Even if they lose their way, they might never stop.
You should be a DJ. You're good. I love it. I love it. That's great. So you're recording or writing another album for release in 2021 or 2022?
So we have another record coming out in September called Age of Isolation.
Yeah, well, that fits, obviously. Yeah.
Not too depressing.
No, that's great.
It's we're actually backed up. I mean, the COVID thing, we're probably 2 records backed up now, which is crazy.
And how do you guys record now? Are you taking advantage of these online tools, or do you get together and do the old analog kind of thing?
We don't like Zoom when we're, it's like the antithesis. You don't want to do that for a band. So
No.
we tried it and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I think we're all vaxxed now and we're trying to get together, and hopefully we'll make it to Scandinavia for our tour in August. And we have a tour with a band called Eggstone, and nobody may know them, but they were the band behind the Cardigans.
Wow.
And they had Tambourine Studios. They basically started, they were a big Scandinavian band in '89, started at Tambourine Studios. A young Cardigans walks in, and that sound that they had, that sort of diminished, sort of minor seventh, they just kind of went with it because Eggstone was doing it. And then they went on to do like the Hellacopters and High and all those Swedish bands. So they were really kind of as pivotal as Max Martin was for all that light Britney Spears pop was for Stockholm. They were for the sort of pop bands of southern Sweden. So we're going to do a tour with them, and hopefully. So that's going to be fun. And the next record will come out. It's got some great artwork. And our whole, like, what we've decided on is we're getting older. We want to stay relevant. And the only way to do that is to work. And to work at it, we have to do a record a year. And it just keeps you, as you start to wander off, because, just old age, I guess, this keeps you locked in. It's like an anchor. And it's a little bit what we've learned from Guided by Voices over the years. Like, those guys just don't take this that preciously, and they just keep pumping. And if they can do it, the Mommyheads can do it. That's our little like New Year's resolution every year. Let's make another one.
It's a great comparison. Guided by Voices, those guys just pump it out just all the time.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible. And you have to look to some of the big stars. My hat is off to them. Tom freaking Jones is still out there cranking it out. Paul McCartney, Van Morrison, Willie Nelson, Bob Dylan. You just have to admire their connection to their art, and they may have bills to pay and may have expensive divorces in their past. I don't care. They're out there on the road, and they are, continuing to crank it out.
Well, you got to be good to do that.
Yeah.
And they're all good. And the other thing is, no one's replaced them.
Yeah, good point. That's true.
Like, Paul Simon's irreplaceable. These guys are just, for what they do, it's so singular for each one of them.
Yep.
That it's almost like they're public. When you're a public figure, like David Gilmour, like, it's almost, you owe it to us when you're Genesis to try to do that one last tour. You owe it to us. It's almost, that's part of the deal. You don't make those great records and just walk away. You don't get that. You don't get that pass.
It's a contract.
Horrible. Okay, bye.
Yeah, it's
this
a contract.
An ear contract. We got.
Yeah. Yep. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Say, like, I saw Lindsey Buckingham before he had a heart attack. I was like, it was like the next day he had a heart attack. But the way he plays guitar, his fingers have a contract with my ears. Like, dude, you're going to get up there and you're going to play. And it doesn't matter what the ticket price is. You're alive. I need to see you,
Yeah. That's great. Okay. Kind of the last question for me. I could go on all day, but the big trend right now out there in recording is collaborations. Yes. The Mommyheads featuring, name 3 people that you would like to feature on a Mommyhead song. So
you mean collaborate with?
Yeah. So you can be Mommyheads featuring Paul McCartney, or Mommyheads featuring Taylor Swift, or the Mommyheads featuring.
I think Lindsey Buckingham would be one.
That's a good one.
There's a guy out there who put one record out in '79 that Thomas Dolby is his first band, called Bruce Woolley. Bruce Woolley and the Camera Club is my fetish new wave artist. And Thomas Dolby moved on after that and did She Blinded Me with Science. I would love to get Bruce Woolley out of retirement. And the third one would be like, I guess, that's a good question. Maybe Tony Banks, get him to come in. you know, do a duet. I mean, there's so many. We love so many musicians.
It's obvious. Yeah. We
don't know ourselves, you know.
I doubt that. I doubt that's being a little hard on yourself.
Well, I mean, I remember loving the same week Iron Maiden and the Blasters. Like, Killers is a great record, and the Blasters' first record is killer too. So it's like, it's just music, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Wow. What a career. Congratulations on I'm just so thrilled that you're back. I feel so lucky now to have had a chance to dive into your world, and it's going to continue for a long time. And I'm going to play a Mommyhead song tonight on the show when I get over there in a few hours.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Well, look, this is a two-way street. And one thing I've noticed with this last record is anyone who likes our music, I would probably like their music. I would like their taste in music. And would probably want to go to a bar with, hang out all night, drink beers, and like scamper off, like stumbling in the street with, because it never fails. You know, we're not a band that goes into the mic and has all black and chains and one eye's fake, like where our audience is the same, but our audience, the Mommyheads audience, are just like us. So the fact that I can have this experience talking to you and to also send emails back and forth in the future and turn each other on to new bands, for me, it enriches my life. So this is why we do it, essentially. What's happening right now.
Love it. Love it. Adam, thanks so much. What a blast. Really enjoyed it. Yeah. Yeah. And more again soon via email or whatever, phone call. What a pleasure chatting with you today.
My pleasure.